Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Stream live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation, and I'm joined this morning by my good friend and brother,
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric Ellis.
We always start with a standing ovation.
Yeah,
Tommy and I are always coming into the 18th hole, waving at our fans in the crowd, right? But Tommy, it's always a joy to be with you, man. I appreciate you, my friend and my brother, man. How are you? How's the week been?
Going well, Eric. Going well. I'm still recovering from that mild sickness, so that got a little bit of a lagging cough, but taking care of myself, man. As I mentioned last week, sometimes I had underappreciated my health until I got sick. Some other folks do that as well, but I'm very, very blessed to be able to wake up on a Saturday morning or any day for that matter, either go into the office or take care of some personal things. But at the office this past week, Eric, had some lessons learned, and most particularly is whereby Eric, I am undoubtedly and arguably going to stand on my values.
Right.
My value of love for humanity, my value of helping people, even through spaces of darkness or in a direction that they do not know they can reach. Right. I want to help them, particularly if I see their potential, if I see an opportunity. And so I was working with a particular client who decided to go in another direction. And at the same time, Eric, I got a call from a client, the CEO, white gentleman, 70 years old, really starting to sunset the career, move into retirement. And he asked me directly, "Hey, Tommy, can I commit the next year to work with you as my coach?"
Okay.
And I said, absolutely.
Right.
I've known this gentleman for about 3 years.
Yes.
I believe he values my input in the senior and executive team meetings.
Yep.
And I can see him, Eric. I can see him. So I take great pride in that opportunity to bring value to one's life. And so as one opportunity went away, another even greater opportunity showed up.
That's right. And I want to do something, Tommy, for you that I know we don't often experience. I want to just celebrate you and that client and the wisdom of that client. I'm excited right now, Tommy, for what he's in store for. I just think that it's a beautiful thing when people have respect enough for a wise brother like yourself to say, "Would you then coach me?" And I know how serious you take those kinds of invitations, man. So I'm just excited right now about what's going to happen between the two of you. And I'm just grateful that God is allowing your voice and your integrity and your intellect and your experience and your knowledge and your passion to be able to make a difference in the life of a CEO that's trying to think about, how do I sort of, what's my swan song?
Yep.
How do I wrap up my career? And to invite you into that hollow place is special, man. And I just want to celebrate that and thank God for it.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it.
Yeah. This week, Tommy, I want to start with something that was shocking to me. So I was in the movie Shirley Chisholm, the great congresswoman that ran for president. And Tommy, we all knew of her life in general. And I heard about the movie, because it had been delayed, and I think she lost her son while she was doing the movie, and that delayed that. And we were waiting on it to come out. And once again, Tommy, we were looking at all the critics and they said the movie was mediocre. And then I saw it yesterday and it was powerful. I saw my little 15 seconds of fame. But I'll tell you, man, her story was so powerful, Tommy. I'm going to really encourage you and our community to watch that movie and to really study her life. I think the most powerful thing in it was that she was really a woman of God, and she stood by her value system and her faith. She went into the hospital to visit George Wallace after he had been shot, and everybody knew he was a big racist, you know.
Yeah.
And they, can have negative impacts on her political career, but she didn't really care about that. She said she knew what it felt like for somebody to try to take your life, and she went in and visited him and prayed with him, and he cried with her. But the other thing that really got me, Tommy, was to see how Black men were not fully supportive of her. And just to see the kind of sexism that women were up against, and that, man, you can buy our little vote and principles don't mean a thing. And it was so important for us to see that, because we as people of color oftentimes get highly offended by racism, but we as men of color don't often enough get as offended by sexism. And so it certainly encouraged me to double and triple down on making sure that I have my eyes wide open around sexism and ways in which we may not be supportive of the leadership, the talent, the skill of women of color and women in general. This is a Women's History Month, I believe, and I'm going to put up Shirley Chisholm is one of my heroes. Because of the work that she's done and because of the character that she did that work with. I also this week had a chance to do some additional work with a new client, Hamilton County Developmentally Disabled Services Agency. We're working with them. We did the IDI with the leadership team. We took them through our Achieving Sustainable Inclusion training session, and they are really looking forward to the journey. And I'm just excited to be working with them. They've got a CEO who is passionate about leading them the right way and making sure that she's continuing to grow and develop. I think that's powerful. We wrapped up our work, our phase one work with 4C for children. And so I gave them, the CEO and the head of HR, sort of a final report and talked about next steps there. And I wrote a song too, Tommy. This is where I'll land. I wrote a song called Just Celebrate.
Yeah.
And I was inspired by my daughter and some of the challenges that she's faced head on with great courage. But sometimes when the next generation is dealing with racism, Tommy, that's harder on us as parents than it is when we go through. And so I've watched her sort of go through that. And the song Just Celebrate is really it's a song in the voice of God that says, I know what you're going through. When you go through pain and suffering, I'm there. You know, when the world is playing games on you, I'm there. Just celebrate. You know, I've come to take you to higher places that they have nothing, they have no control over what you do and who you will become. And so I said that to her, man, and she was moved by it. And she really felt like, you know, Dad, I appreciate this customized song, a message, a word from God that's designed for me.
Yeah, Eric, kudos to you and your creativity in expressing your love. So that pebble that you dropped in that well of love, support, and respect, I believe with Jillian and your other children, will ripple out far beyond your time on earth. It will be a lasting memory. As Maya Angelou said, that people don't always remember what you said, they don't always remember what you did, but they remember how you made them feel. And that feeling of love that is actually you. You are the embodiment of the expression of love. Jillian, she's gonna be okay, E. She's going to be
Yeah.
okay.
Right. And the thing that you and I have acknowledged, and we are so excited about our guest, so we're going to pull him up right now, is that our children do need challenges. They do need to face adversity because those things build resilience. And so, for any parents out there that are always trying to, guard your kids or sort of move them away from adversity, they need that in their lives because it's what builds up the muscles of resilience. And so I'm excited about that. She's built for this. She's built for this.
Yeah.
We've got a special guest today that is joining us from the DC area, and that is Todd Simmons. How are you, my friend and brother?
Good morning. I was about to say good afternoon again. I know I'm not on a different time zone yet. I will be next week. But, good morning here from the DMV area. Both you and Tommy, thank you for the opportunity to join you this morning on this, I would say, beautiful day. But every day is a beautiful day, regardless if it's raindrops, which there's a lot of in the DMV today.
Yes, sir.
Ruining our cherry blossom festival today that we were supposed to go to. But I'm excited to be here this morning, starting my day off with you guys.
Right. Well, let me start by saying that Todd and I just recently met, and the meeting was so powerful. It took us a minute to get connected, but when we finally did, it was sort of a quick ramp up. We met each other, and it didn't take long for us to feel that we were kindred spirit, that we were relatives because of ADHD, fast brain, 1,000 miles an hour, but we had similar value systems, and so it was an excitement of almost dueling banjo. And then I stood down to the power of his story.
Yeah.
And his story was so moving that I had goosebumps on my arms. And I just began to thank God for this brother and who he is and the power of his story to literally be transformational in our country and in the world. And that's why I tell people that don't, my new album that I'm working on, Tommy, the title of it is My Sound. And I believe that everybody has a sound. And so don't try to be somebody else, be you. And I just think that Todd's sound is so powerful and his story is so powerful that I want to just stop there, Todd, and let you begin by just introducing yourself to our community. You can tell them what you've done quickly, but I want to go back and I want to start from your growing up life and the experiences that you had, because I think it will touch a lot of people, and then we'll land at the end back on career and things like that.
Okay, I'll just give a quick introduction of myself, and then we can go into that whole quote unquote my I'd say short life, because I still think I'm a very young man, at least in spirit. Sometimes my hips tell me differently, but good afternoon, good morning again to your audience. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So I am Todd Simmons. I live in the DMV area, particularly Rockville, Maryland. But I'm an Air Force veteran. I served 25 and a half years in the U.S. Air Force. I'm originally from a small town in South Carolina, Hardeeville, South Carolina. For most people who do not know where Hardeeville, South Carolina is at, I'll give you, it's sandwiched in between Hilton Head, South Carolina, which is very resort heavy area, people vacation, in Savannah, Georgia. So it's 10 minutes on one side and 30 minutes on one side. So it's right there in the middle between Savannah, Georgia and Hilton Head. So grew up there, single mom, had, two brothers and two sisters, kind of a mixed bag of family there. I'm the youngest of all of them. Just grew up pretty, we can get into the details of it, but pretty challenging environment. A lot of things, growing up, I'm a late 70s, growing up as a teenager, 90s kid. Well, a lot of things was just changing for the world, and, coming into my own and not having really any kind of, I would say, not really a foundation, but I did not have any anchors that should, that I can really say that this is who I am. A lot of challenges that I didn't understand growing up, a lot of things that I kind of cemented my feet into the ground thinking that this was going to be me. At a very young age, probably, even almost preteen, I've already had my destiny planned out that it was going to be very mediocre, that it was going to be nothing, that my outlook on life was going to be, at best, I get, above a 50-cent an hour minimum wage job, and I was going to live life. So, that's just a little bit about, so we can get into where you want me to start in that whole journey there, Tom.
Right. I hope nothing that I was pulling up showed on the screen, did it?
No.
Okay, good. Yeah, but I think that some of the things that were powerful that you shared with me is really a single mom, but that had you kind of with a married gentleman, and just how that impacted you and your self-esteem and everything.
So my family dynamics, and I love my family to this day, but family is family, and the dynamics are dynamics, right? So me, I was born in 1976, and why I give that year, because I was born, it wasn't until 27 years later that I really knew my family's dynamic. I was 27 years old. So this wasn't something that as a kid I grew up with 18 years old thinking that that my family dynamic was, I thought normalcy looks like what is presented to you.
That's right.
So whatever is presented to you becomes normal, especially if it's consistent and it's repetition. So it becomes what I know. Just like if you go to the gym every morning, you love working out, then you're going to go to the gym every morning. So for me, growing up, I'm the youngest. Like I said, my mom, I have two sisters and a brother. One of my sisters passed away a few years ago, but two sisters and a brother, and I'm the youngest. And then I had a stepbrother who kind of entered the scene at some point in my mom's second marriage. So for me, my last name always was Simmons. And I always, as a kid, was curious because I'm from a different dad. My mom was married. She had 3 kids. She got a divorce. And somehow, 7 years later, I show up. And I show up, and it's just this normalcy. What was normal to me that I never understood is, and I won't use the word, because I think trauma is something that's, that's infused into families and things from generational. It's not just someone decides to be the person of the aggressor or whatever. I think it's learned behaviors in the DNA. Sometimes it just becomes this cycle of who we are. So for me, I always felt like I was different. I felt, I would be, treated different. I would say things. I was mentally, physically abused in some aspects. I remember something that's being said, my last name being Simmons. And I remember one of my earliest memory of belief of being inadequate and less than was just my last name. My family's last name was Washington. And it's just kids, right? I was always told that, my family came from descendants of George Washington. It was just kids talking, older. And you were nothing. And I would, Encyclopedia Britannica back in the day, pull up a picture of George Washington, be like, well, this is where we come from, and you come from nothing. And I just feel like I never understood any of these things. And to be in, and it just, just using it for context, like, the word bastard became something synonymous with a vocabulary with Todd.
Wow.
Todd and bastard became
synonymous.
It wasn't a cell phone where I can Google what that meant.
Right.
So for me, what is it? Like I knew it had a derogatory connotation. And so when I say I was my mom was a single mom, she was. And I saw my dad periodically, but I saw my dad on multiple days a week, maybe 2 days a week, but it would be like, it would be this weird, growing up, it would be this weird time that I saw him. It would be, it wasn't any normalcy of, like Monday through Friday, it was this weird time, but it became my normalcy. So, to progress through the story, then, 6 or 7 years old, my mom married a preacher.
Okay.
So it was confusing to me because I was seeing my dad 1 or 2 days a week, and now there's a preacher that shows up, and he's married. Now we move into we had a traumatic, our house burned down, so we move into the church's house. So this whole turmoil, that's when my whole family kind of gets split up. My sister lives with a relative here. My sister lives with a relative here. And my brother, who was 10 years older than me, he's now a teenager, and and he's moving on with his life kind of earlier than being 18. So all of these things are happening. And then, a year later, the preacher leaves my mom, and then my dad shows back up, and then I see him 2 days a week. So this whole thing goes on, and I pinpoint that one of 1,000 stories. So fast forward to 27 years old, so my dad and I probably at 14 kind of broke off of a relationship. I got old enough to be more conscious about life, and so from 14 to 18 kind of really didn't have it. Then I kind of saw my dad, my last, I still saw him, but we kind of had a big fight, to be honest with you, when I was 18 years old. And I'll go back to a little bit more about my education journey in a second. But I was 18 years old. I had a fortunate opportunity to join the Air Force after I dropped out of high school, didn't go back to school for a couple of months, didn't have the grades to graduate, between a French teacher and an Air Force recruiter who really saved my life and opportunity, got me this opportunity to come into the Air Force with the lowest score you can score on the entry exam. If I would have looked over left and right and not answered one question, I would not have been able to come into the Air Force.
Wow.
This time I failed the test by 5 points. The second time I passed the test by literally the skin of my teeth.
Yeah.
So my dad came. I saw my dad. The last time I really communicated fully with him before I was 27 was that 18th year when I was coming in the Air Force. And he told me that I would be back in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So I remember no one ever knew. I've been retired from the Air Force 4.5 years, and I'm in front of audiences all the time. And when it's a military audience, I always say I served in the military 25 years, 7 months, 11 days, and 90 minutes. I always say that. I know to the minute that I served in the Air Force, and no one knew what that meant until 29. No one still, most people, I'm telling you now, but the first time I said that was at my retirement ceremony when my mom was sitting in the audience, and I stood up on stage in front of all these hundreds of people, and I said 25 years, 7 months, 11 days, and 90 minutes. But that was kind of paying a little bit of, you can't define me.
Yep. Not 2 weeks.
Not 2 weeks. And not only did I do 25 years, 7 months, 11 days, and 90 minutes in the Air Force, I'm retiring as the highest enlisted rank that you can make. And I'm standing on a stage at a location where I'm the second person in charge of education for 600,000 people, a high school dropout, and a kid who failed the 4th grade, who failed the 9th grade, who read on a 10th grade reading level when he joined the Air Force.
Right. Hold on. Let's just take a time out there, Todd. So we gotta just socialize this in the atmosphere, and just really say to our audience, this is the reason why I've encouraged so many people to watch this interview, because your story is so powerful and yet unfortunately so common. There are so many of our young people that are going through that life. And what you said to us is, number one, what I'm going through is wild, and yet it's normal. And I don't see it in any way. I've not defined myself in any way other than a child that's navigating through what is my current reality. And literally, it's filled with calamity, with turmoil, change, failure academically, and really almost being like a rudderless boat at some point. And yet you were rescued because of the sum of what was in you was so valuable that some people saw that and decided to invest in that. Tommy, what did you hear?
I heard a rich story of challenges and opportunities, but I'm curious, Todd, when you look back now at your life then, from being very young into 6, 7 years old, up to 14, 18, all these milestones, what would you tell yourself now about the journey that you've gone through? Because earlier you said, you still feel young,
Mhm.
right? And I think you still have a lot of arc of life left. But as you look back now, what do you tell yourself? Do you say that I've overcome all odds, or what do you remind yourself? What's that self narrative that you share with yourself?
So I will tell you my self narrative that I share, 'cause it's a lot more, inside of those, those points that we just discussed.
Right.
It's something that I have really lived with probably for the better part of, the last 23, 24 years. And it's something that I have, I'm very big into affirmations, and I'm very big into not really changing my affirmation.
Yeah.
And I think I have to ingrain something into me that I can believe, that it becomes the same as going to the gym every morning. It becomes the same as becoming an athlete that wants to go from college to NFL. I have to believe that there is growth in this affirmation. So, I grew up, so for what I tell myself, Tommy, every day in every situation, every time I failed college algebra 3 times for my undergraduate degree, every time I had a challenge, every time I walked into someone's office and they said, you are not worthy of this opportunity. Anytime somebody told me anything for the last 25 years, I'm sorry, about 23, 24 years, I said, why not me?
Yeah.
That's what I tell myself. And I literally, every time I walk into a room when the anxiety is high, and I know that I'm just some small consulting company that's trying to rise, but I know when I walk in that room, I'm not going to show any of that, because I believe and I know for sure that I belong in this room.
Yeah.
And the only thing that you have on me is time. And
Right.
you just give me a couple of minutes, I'm going to catch you. So for me, it's always never seeing the inferiority, never seeing that thing that people told me all my life that I wasn't going to be anything. I had teachers tell me you're not going to be anything. I remember being in a junior year before my senior year, going to my guidance counselor, and because I was in an underserved community, they used to get vouchers for the SAT. So you don't have to spend the money. And I went in and I said, hey, can I get a voucher for the SAT? Didn't know anything. Didn't think about going to college, but I had some friends who were smart, and that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he went, I'm not wasting the time, not wasting the money.
Yeah.
And for me, I used to always have a why me mentality.
Right.
I used to go to my mom and go, why are we poor? Why we don't have this? Why this? Why me? Why me? And I started living in this zone of, I believed I wasn't worthy.
Right.
Because I'm telling myself, I'm not asking myself when I'm saying why me, I'm telling myself that I'm already not, before I even walk in the room, I'm already telling myself. So when I started living, I went through some things early, and I will talk about that. I went through some mental health challenges as a young man at 19 years old, where I tried to attempt suicide twice. Yeah. And I went through this succession of just, I don't want to say pity, because it's not a pity party. I did not have tools. I did not have an environment. I did not have what right looked like to me. I did not have strong Black men that I knew that was going to, were people I can mirror myself after. The only mirror I had was me in the mirror.
Right. Yeah. Hold on again, Todd. I'm going to ask you this too. This is so powerful. The why me, the transformation from why me to why not me. I want you to help us to just slow down for a minute, because you said it, and because we hear it, it just, I attempted suicide. Can you talk to us a little bit about the kinds of things that were pressing in that brought you to that place? And then how were you able to pivot out of that? Did God just rescue you out of that?
Yeah. So for me, when I joined the Air Force, it was a lifeline. And I'll be kind of brief in this story. It was a lifeline. I felt 1,000 feet tall when I went to BMT. You could not tell me anything. When I went to basic military training in the Air Force as a young 18-year-old, no matter what they told me, I would have done it. If they told me that we had to sleep outside and you couldn't eat for 4 days, I would have been the happiest, hungry 18-year-old in San Antonio, Texas. I knew that I knew the moment. I knew the moment.
Yeah.
I knew the moment. I dreamed of that moment most of my life. How do I get out of here? 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 I knew the moment. So I went to BMT, went through BMT, loved every second of it, no issues. Went to the next form of my training, which was more about academic training. They made the first time someone saw something in me, when someone walked up to me, they used to call them ropes. If you wore a certain color rope, you were in charge of your other 18-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
So this NCO was a white guy, came up to me, white young man in his mid-20s, and he said, "Hey, you should go to rope training. I think you got natural leadership skills." So I said, "Okay, yes, sir." Went. So now I'm in charge of 50 people.
Right.
And I was terrified, and I was good at it.
Right. Like what?
Yeah.
What?
Like, what?
Leader.
Like, I can do this. I was marching 50 people around the base. They had to come to me. I mean, I was like, okay, like, I can do this. So did that. Then I went to New Jersey. So we got to go to 3 trainings. I went to New Jersey, same thing. They're like, there was an army. This is Army training now that trains the Air Force. And they told me, Airman Simmons, man, they used to call me Airman Run Through a Wall. So they said, if I tell you to run through a wall, you probably would. And I was like, yes, sir, Sergeant, because I knew the moment. I knew that this was the moment that I can change my life. So there was going to be no kind of moping around, giving less than 100%. So go back to when I was at BMT, wasn't smart in school, told I was stupid, was called all of these things. At the end of basic military training, you have to take 100-question tests. And throughout those 6 weeks that you were there, they give you one book to study for this test. And they're always telling you to look in this book. If I see your eyes not in this book, you're in trouble whenever we're somewhere. I took that literally.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the first time that I've never passed tests. I wasn't great in school. And I didn't know why. But I repetitively looked at this book for 6 weeks. And when they gave the results of the test out that day in my flight of 55 people, I scored the highest. I scored a 98. So I was like, that's not possible. Wrong.
Right.
But that's when I first learned that whatever my issues were, this is a way to overcome it. I might have to study 10 hours when you have to study 2. And if I just put my mindset to looking at this thing more times, instead of getting frustrated with it the first time,
right,
then maybe I can get through this. And from there, that's where I started figuring out my own issues with learning. So fast forward, this is why I wanted to tell you all that before the suicide attempt, how happy and motivated I was.
Right.
And I showed up to my first base in Montgomery, Alabama. So I want to put a book in for you. My first base is what they call Air University, our education arm of the Air Force, in Montgomery, Alabama. My last base, 25 years, 7 months, and 11 days later, was Montgomery, Alabama, Air University. My first assignment in the United States Air Force, I showed up on my 19th birthday, 10 February 1995. First day. I showed up with all of those attributes that I just said I was.
Mm-hmm.
Airman who would run through a wall. 120 days later, I had a government-issued rifle in my mouth, about to pull the trigger and take my own life.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
120 days. What happens in the span of 120 days? Why I had to set the story up that way, because here comes a kid that we don't understand. This is why I do a lot of work trying to with youth today is we don't understand truly how these transactional, transformational points in people's life is so important. Because you had a kid who came from this background who thought he was nothing. Now you put him in an environment where every system says that he can be everything.
Right.
And then I show up at my first assignment and someone tells me I'm nothing again.
Right.
Yeah.
I overheard people in a room that did not know, and it's happened to be 3 white gentlemen in a room that they didn't know I was outside the door. And they were talking completely racist and derogatory things by name about the 3 Black airmen who worked on that flight, which one of them was me, one of them was another young man, and one was another young woman. And when you were indoctrinated to think that I don't care about, so for the last 4 or 5
you believed them.
For the last 4 or 5 months, I've had white men, women that's been around me, and we all eating mud together. We all low crawling together. We all are singing and crying in church on Sunday together. We all look together because we're all uniformed.
Yep,
We're all
yep.
fighting for the same thing.
Yep.
And then now I hear that maybe this may not be true. So the same thing, I live in this house at 8, 9, 10 years, and I want this man that is my dad to be bigger than life. And then I hear that it's not true. Love me. So now I'm playing this yo-yo thing, and I'm 19 years old, and now my life at 19 years old to me is going, it was all a lie. I really can't find no peace in this world. It's all a lie.
Come on now.
So for me, it took me 4 days to come up and tell a story to myself that there's no peace in this world. And I went to work one day and decided that there was no peace in this world. And from there, I didn't do it. And the next day I called the only person in this world, on this earth, that I trusted, that sung to me at night, said prayers with me at night, told me I was worthy, even when the whole world wasn't. It was my mom. And I called her and I told her, thank you for everything you did. And I had a plan, and I'm going to go kill myself.
Right.
Most unfair thing you can tell a woman who has no access and no resources to come save you.
Right.
And somebody saved me that night. I was on the way. I was on the way to my 85 Toyota Celica to head out.
Yeah.
And I bumped into a gentleman that night who saw me and stopped me and helped me and saved my whole life.
What did he say, Todd?
Well, what he said was, well, there's no way he just saw me. I was actually in a phone booth, and then we all are old enough to remember phone booths. And I called my mom from a phone booth, and I couldn't get out of this phone booth. In a phone booth, you got to pull the thing to get out. I was in such a mental crisis, I was pushing the phone booth. So I was beating this phone booth up, trying to get out. And that's when, in the Air Force, we call them first sergeants, and he was coming in to do like checking on people. That's his job. So he sees this young kid just bam, 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 bam. So he comes and helps me out the phone booth, and he sits me down and said, how can I help you? And I tell people, those are the most powerful words I've ever heard as a teenager. How can I help you?
Yes, sir.
He could have said, what's wrong with you?
Right.
Yep. Come on now. Come on, Todd. Come on now. Come on now.
He could have said a lot of things, say, how can I help you? And it disarmed me. Because he didn't look like me. And now I was already angry that I was finding out that maybe things aren't true. And maybe the guy who doesn't look like me and looks like the people who have ruined and shattered this thing, maybe I can't trust you. But I did trust him because I rewound the tape in my head for 120 days, all my interactions with this person in front of me. And it happened to be one of the only people that I had all the positive interactions with.
Right.
When I got to the base day one, I had to check in, and he's one of the people who I had to check in with. And he checked me in like he checked probably hundreds of people in, but he asked me an important question. And I asked this question 1,000 times in the last 4 years because it's actually a slide on my presentations. I said, who's the most important person in your life? Because that's the question he asked me. And I can be in an audience of 1,000 people, and I call them powerful questions. We all should live with powerful questions. And I asked audiences, I said, what powerful question have you ever been asked? And I said, has anybody ever been asked this question? Who's the most important person in your life by anybody in supervision, leadership? I usually get less than 10 hands out of 1,000. Right? So he asked me that, and I said, my mom, and I just rolled out because I wanted to get away from him. For the next 120 days, every time, and I was security forces in the Air Force, so I worked the front gates when I was a young airman. So if you come onto a military base, you see this person at the gate checking you. That was me. So everybody saw me coming through the gate. Whenever he came through the gate, he would stop in his Volkswagen van and he would say, how's your mom?
Oh, wow.
Now, again, in that point, I'm 19 and I'm in a 97-degree sun. I don't care. Get out of the way. I got all these cars.
Keep going. Yep.
But when it mattered, it mattered. So that night it mattered because I'm looking at him and I'm going, I might be able to trust him.
Right.
And I did. And he changed my whole life. So
Todd,
Right.
I am moved for one by your testimony, even more than the story, a testimony.
Yeah.
And I know that our community, I'll speak for myself. When I was listening to your testimony, I was in between different energies.
Mhm.
Full transparency.
Yeah.
One energy, I was trying to connect your story with my own story.
Mm.
Let me see if I've gone through that. Okay, that's a reflection point in my life, whatever. That was very fleeting because then my energy and my mind shifted to what you were saying,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's a talent
Mm.
and a skill that you have. So we know that as believers,
Mm.
our life is designed,
Mhm.
right? And our God continues to speak to us oftentimes through experiences and or other people.
Mhm.
And we're children. We're knuckleheads. We don't always get it, T. We don't
Right.
always get it. So he will keep saying it over and over and over again until we get it. I share that because I think that our testimonies, our stories, our narratives are both personal and universal.
Mhm.
Mm.
I really do. The
Yeah.
more personal and transparent and free that we are, the more universal
Mhm.
that this thing of life is. I know this morning you're speaking to some folks
No
beyond just
doubt.
me. I know it.
Absolutely.
I know also that, and we've been around enough. There may be some people that are in our community, maybe listening to this on on their own podcast stream, that may sit back with arms crossed and say, "Really, this brother went through all this, man? Really?" The short answer is, really.
Absolutely.
Life
Absolutely.
is incredible. Real life is more dramatic than theater.
Yeah.
It is. Real life is more dramatic, right?
Yeah.
You are a testament
Yep.
of the great and grand potential of
Yep.
a life fully lived.
Mhm.
Right.
Not a life of full privilege
Mhm.
or full depression and oppression, but full lived. Brother, I'm going to stop to say, you speaking to me this morning.
Mm.
Yeah.
You speaking to me.
Yeah.
No, I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Right.
And I've not always, I tell people vulnerability is, I have a word of the year every year in my company, and it's 2024. The word is vulnerability, because I'm getting more opportunities to, get back out on the speaking circuit. And I want to tell people and show people that this isn't easy. Like when I speak in a large group, when I used to have a traveling exec with me, when I was still in the military, and I would speak about these things in the military, which made me almost odd.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nobody, no man's man is
Yeah.
speaking that. Right.
It would always be the, really?
Yeah.
Like you're
And you told that?
going to say that? So one of the things I did when I first retired is when I wrote my first book, Why Not Me? I said vulnerability for me has to be, I'm not going to choose what I say anymore. I'm just going to put it all in the book.
Yes, sir.
Now I don't have to choose. It's just there.
Yep.
So and the only thing I'm choosing now is how I relay it to the audience that I'm trying to tell this thing to. And I appreciate what you said, Tommy, because I've been asked that. I work, and it's really hard. And I think is something you both probably can experience this as African American men and has navigated multiple different rooms or environments. And like today, being older, we're not old, just older and a different generation. When you're trying to relay, like for me, when I go home, they say you speak different, and I'm like, but that doesn't mean that I can't. That doesn't mean that I don't know where you come from.
Right.
Right.
Oh man, you live in that big house. That doesn't mean I don't know where you come from.
Right.
Oh man, I see you all over social media. That doesn't mean that I don't know where you come from. So sometimes I do struggle with
Yeah.
and it was part of why I wrote that book. It was sometimes I struggle because people always start me at 8.
Right.
It's like, oh, you're 8 out of 10. You don't know. You don't really know.
Right. That's not achievable. That's unrealistic for me.
That's unrealistic for me. When I tell a young, when I was in the military, I was very deliberate about that. I'm a very proponent of education, huge proponent of education. But I would see young African-American men, 19, 20 years old, that I would look at them and I'll talk to them and I'll be like, hey, so what are you doing? Oh, that ain't for me. Oh, gee, that ain't for me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what does that even mean? Oh, well, I didn't grow up that way. I didn't grow up, that's not for me. I just want to go to work. I said, let me talk to you real quick. Let me tell you what's for you.
Right.
So for me, sometimes it's very difficult for me and very challenging for me to accept position in life today.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask this, Todd. So this moment of considering ending it all, interrupted by someone who you believe cared about you. What was your trajectory following that? Was it a spike up? Was it a slow trajectory upward? Was it back and forth? And at what point, if ever, did you get kind of out of the woods of that thinking?
So when I got out of the woods of that thinking was it was a pretty quick, change. Not a quick, when I would say a year.
Right.
So I went through that. And my first encounter with mental health treatment at 19 years old. Tools. That's why, in the African-American community, we don't talk about mental health. One thing that I'm very proud of personally is not any success I've had, is the success at my own dinner table. The success that I raised 2 young women who always had parents who talked about mental health and never made it shameful. So when my oldest daughter went to college and was dealing with hers, she called her parents and wasn't shameful. My youngest daughter wasn't shameful. And when I go, even my parent, my mom or my sister, I talk about it ad nauseum with my uncomfortable family when I go back, to South Carolina, because we have to talk about it. We have to make it a relevant comment. So I have tools now. And that same gentleman that I said that gave me that saved me in the phone booth had a relationship with me now for the next 8 or 9 months. And we ended up going to Saudi Arabia together. He ended up for 3 months. And he gave me this napkin at the end of our time in Saudi Arabia. And I tell his story all the time. And he wrote all these bases around the world. I'm a kid who grew up in South Carolina, never left 3 states before I came in the military. Never been on an airplane. The only thing I knew about travel was in those encyclopedias in my mom's den. So this guy told me, he said, you have to go get the greatest education you can get. You have to get out of this environment. Yes, you're from South Carolina, you came in the military, but you're now in Alabama. You have not seen anything, is what he told me. You don't know what life is. So he gave me this list of 8 places that I should go where there are U.S. military bases. And I came back and I put in for them. In a year and about a month after I got there and all these things occurred, I was headed to England. And so I'm 21 years old, 21 years old almost, headed to England. And I did not come back to the United States for 17 consecutive years.
Wow.
Bye, y'all. Bye. Bye. Deuces. I'll see y'all at some point, maybe.
I did not expect that. Boy.
17 consecutive years and 41 countries later, I saw the world.
Yes, sir.
And it was in my kids. I got married, like a year and a half after I got to England. My wife's from New Mexico, and she's just also similar. She's Black and from New Mexico, so we have always had these, culture kind of like education things because she wasn't raised in the South and I wasn't raised in this, over where she was at. So I stayed overseas for a long time. My kids got to travel. The funniest story I've ever had about my oldest daughter is when we came back to the States. Her first time going to American high school, she was a junior in high school. And she came back to the States and she was a senior and she was upset about her senior trip being to London. How many kids? First world problem.
Right.
She
Right.
was, she was livid. And the reason she was livid because she's lived in England for 6 years, and London was like going to the grocery store to her.
Right.
So
right.
her mindset about her experiences of life, I didn't see it as a negative. I'm going at 17 years old, we were lucky to go to the planetarium 14 miles away.
Right.
But so that trajectory for me, to answer your question, was pretty quick. That's when I went to England, and I met another gentleman who had a master's degree in English. And while we were at work, I was a cop and I had to write police reports. And my police reports were probably the worst. They should be in the Security Forces Museum. They were bad. It got to a point where he would put red ink on my reports and he would stop writing on them and go, "You just sit down next to me. Just get up." But I never knew he had a master's degree in English, but teaching me how to write. And he would, and this is like, we're at work for 10 hours a day. So I was getting an English class.
Wow.
And because he was my supervisor, he said, "Hey, go over and sign up for this class, a college class, because it's going to make you better at your job." That's the way he, because I was the 19, 20-year-old said, I'm never going to school. I barely got out of high school. I barely got out of middle school. I'm not going to school. I'm going to keep myself safe. And safe is come to work, do a good job, get paid. I'm not going to challenge myself. So I went and I failed that class, City College of Chicago. I'll never forget it. They have an online, it was a VHS tape course. You watch all the VHS tapes and you go take a test. Failed it horribly, miserably. And then he kept pushing me to go take a class, So I said, "What's the easiest classes I can take?" He said, "You should take a criminal justice class because that's what you do every day, and you'll be able to see some transferable knowledge that will make this easier." And I did that. And I fell in love with it. And I started going to school. So within me starting that trajectory of going to school, within probably 6 or 7 years, I had my master's degree. And I didn't stop there. So I got a master's degree, and then I said, I'm going to go teach college. So I started as an adjunct professor with Central Texas College back in 2005. And my last class I taught was a month ago.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
Let me jump in again, Todd, just to celebrate a couple of things. Number one, I want to celebrate how cavalierly and how easily you say I failed. Most of us are so ashamed of failure that we won't recall it for ourselves, let alone anybody else. And then you show us that your embracing of failure is not disconnected with success that you found. And I think that's powerful. But the other thing that you said, man, and I don't want us to miss this. What is it about you that allowed you to become a sponge and a person that was willing to pass the test? Because there's nothing about your background that should said that you would say to people, if you tell me to walk through a wall, I'll walk through that wall. And that's something that's kind of amazing about you. And that you sat down alongside of the person who had red ink all over your. Now, we could easily get just offended by that.
Yeah.
Not to be offended. You chose to see that as a learning lab. And then you went further to try. What is that? Help us to understand, what is it in your mind that allowed you to become a sponge for opportunities and one who was willing to follow others? Did that have to do with the gratitude that you had for the overall? What is it?
I'm going to tell you, Eric, no and yes.
Wow.
So the no part is, this is something through self-discovery that I discovered about myself after serving 22 years in the military. I've been in some kind of continuous improvement since I was 19 when I tried to commit suicide. So I've been to behavior specialist. I've spent 7 years talking to the chaplain in the Air Force. That was for 7 years. That's the person I went to go, let me tell you, because they have you can go say anything in the military to a chaplain, they can't repeat it. And why I say no, if I look back at my military career and I was to lay out the achievements that I had in the military, I did very well. I got promoted faster. I won every award. I'm the youngest person that military selects 4 people a year to go to the FBI National Academy, and they're all officers. I'm the youngest person in the history of 40 years to ever go to that school, and no one has ever been selected as young as me to go there and get a 3.96 GPA out of it, But I will tell you all of that for years. For 22 years, I was chasing trauma, Todd.
Oh, wow.
Because what I was doing for 22 years, I never enjoyed one of those accomplishments. I actually looked back at the pictures one day. This is when we were moving. We have a suitcase full of pictures, and every promotion that I was promoted, through the ranks, my family's always there to take this promotion picture. And the look on my face, Tommy, is not the person you know today. It's just this stoic look, because I was always chasing, I am better than you said I was. I am better than you said I was. I'm better than, and I always chased that. It was never enough. It was damaging. It was not a healthy lifestyle. I could never, I would take my diploma from a college, I would walk in a line, I got my master's degree. Okay, throw that in the corner. What's next?
Yep.
Okay, you promoted me. What's next? What's the next promotion? Okay, you know what? I got that achievement. Yeah, I broke that record. So what? What's next? I was always chasing that. You said I wasn't good enough, but I'm going to keep showing you. And it wasn't until like 22 years in the military that someone gave me that as a gift. It was like, what are you chasing?
Yeah.
And I had to really do some self-reflection. And it was one of the reasons I retired. So at the rank I was at in the military, I could have stayed for years longer. But at 25 years, I looked around and I had 2 kids, I had a wife, I've traveled all over the world, I've sacrificed my family, even when the Air Force did not ask me to. I've done things that no one has asked me to do that damaged me physically, mentally, relationship, and I've done it because I was chasing things for no reason. And I said, what do I want to do? Who am I? And I could not answer the question. So I said, you know what? If I can't find this person right now, and I'm not going to find it right now, and I'm going to continue the same behaviors. So I decided to retire.
Yep.
And when I retired, I was on a journey of finding who I was. And when I told the audience the other day, they were like, hey, the same kind of question you kind of asked there. It's like, hey, how do you, like, you look different. I've known you a couple of years. And I said, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. And I'm not the happiest I've ever been in my life because I got out of the military or I changed, because I started falling in love with myself.
There it is, Todd. There it is. You answered the question that had been asked before. Who do you love the most?
I had to love myself first.
Come on.
And I never loved myself.
Right.
I was trying to prove to the part of me I always hated that I was better than that. And I told Eric something. So I see you have Todd M. Simmons on the screen. My mom named me Todd in a Black community, and I despised it for a long time because I was called Todd. And then I came in the military and I reinvented myself. I used my middle name, Maurice, because it sounded more Black. And it was the first time that I could control what a new environment of people called me.
Yeah. And
I just X the Todd off. And I just called myself, even my wife didn't know my name was Todd when we were dating.
Right.
So, it was one of these things where I was hating the person that I was, and I didn't know how to break free and love that person. So I reinvented myself.
Yeah.
Right. Todd, I wanna just jump in now. We've just blown through that hour like it was nothing. Like it was nothing. Literally, it was nothing. But I want to reinforce this, and then I want Tommy to ask a question, and then I want you to kind of close this out. I think there are so many of us, number one, who absolutely need counseling and help from the outside. We need somebody to see something in us that we may not see in ourselves. But you've said here today that what I realized is that I was chasing, and I was trying to prove to the critics that I wasn't what they said I was.
Mhm.
But what you really said is that I had to prove to myself,
Mhm.
which I wasn't able to do. So I was constantly climbing
Mhm.
in order to drown out the noise
Yeah.
that I believed that I was not good enough. And then you said that I finally fell in love with myself.
Mhm.
And that moves me so emotionally because I know that there's not a class of people that are there. I think all people at times are there. And
Mhm.
as I think about my own children, I know that those are the silent ghosts that are speaking at night, that you're not good enough. You're not going to make it, and they begin to quietly not love themselves. And I just want to thank you, and I want to thank God for giving you that revelation. And I think that that's the deposit that you came here today
Mhm.
to deliver and to invest in our community. Begin by loving yourself.
Mhm.
And you love yourself by caring for yourself and by giving yourself grace and things like that, man. But I just want to thank you for that amazing gift that you've given us. Tommy, why don't you share a word? And then, Todd, if there's anything else that you want to make sure that you leave behind, man, I want you to sort of do that.
Yeah, my final piece. This has been a blessing this morning to speak to Brother Todd Maurice Simmons. I appreciate that. I'm reminded of the good book, and it speaks about King Solomon. And King Solomon had come into enormous wealth, not only monetary wealth, but the wealth of having access to almost anything that he wanted on this earth in the world. King Solomon. And then there's Solomon's sorrow, that within that wealth, that level of achievement, there was some sorrow, some unhappiness. And so King Solomon was reminded to focus on what does he love as well, what's important. And that story said God called King Solomon back to him and said, "Hey, remember, I am the one that knows the arc of your
Mm,
life." So as I listened to Todd this morning, I'm reminded of myself that there are many times that I've achieved certain things
right.
and I wasn't always happy.
That's right.
Other people were happy for me.
Mhm.
There may be a photo op of that
Right.
moment,
Right.
but I know exactly what you're saying. Like, all right, we won a championship. Let's win another. On to the next one. On to the next one.
Right.
I'm being reminded by your testimony today to pause,
Mhm.
to be present,
Mhm.
to love and appreciate the moment.
Mhm.
The moment. Thank you, brother. Thank you
Mm.
for your words this morning.
No, I appreciate it. I tell you, this might be one of them. This is definitely not accidentals. Because just think about, we were connected, Eric, weeks ago, and I was traveling all over the place, and I didn't get an opportunity. And the person who connected you to
Right.
me,
Dr. Reggie Crane,
yeah,
Tommy.
Dr.
Dr.
Crane,
Reggie. Yeah.
we were connected the same way. So this is we don't have a history. So we were connected by someone else. This is all connections within the last 7 or 8 months, that somebody connected me with him. You connect me. He connected me with you. And now I'm connected with Tommy. And now we're here talking. And we just talked less than 72 hours ago for the first time.
Right. That's right. That's
So,
right.
so I am, what Tommy said about the moment, I don't waste moments. And I just want to, every moment in my life is precious. And I absolutely think this moment of the last hour and a half I spent with you guys has been precious and a gift. And I'll just be totally honest. I got up this morning feeling not whole of myself, because we get there sometimes. We get into this moment of of self-doubt. And we all, no matter, and not about getting on this pop, but just things were circulating because we had a lot of business opportunities this week that I'm getting anxiety about, because it's a pivot for our business. And it's like, man, like, are they going to accept? I woke up with these thoughts in my head, and I didn't wake up with the opportunity to understand that I had an opportunity to be in this moment. So I thank each of you for allowing me to be here, because you have given me a gift today to recenter myself and be present in the moment of, man, calm down, bro. The fact that you're even in the meeting is a win. The fact that you even get a phone call back from people is a win. The fact that they told you that you are a finalist is a win.
Right. That's right.
Stop
That's
it. Stop.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. Go ahead. And so what I would say as I close us out is that I'm grateful that God has given us time today and some messages that can go viral in our own lives. Because we need to have it reinforced to us who God is and what he desires for our lives, and the power of our life, our story, and our message. Just think of what a loss it would have been if we all lived our entire lives and never found this moment. And I just want to thank both of you. Todd, you got new best friends for life, man. And we're going to do some amazing things together. But community, what I want you to hear from Todd is that he's saying that you have no idea the infinite amount of relationships that are available to you that can pour energy and life into your body and your future. Don't miss those. They are infinite. And in a time of negativity where that's all we hear swirling around us is negativity. There are powerfully positive people, lives, stories, and truths out there. And as we connect to each other, it sort of begins to refill us with what we need for the journey. And I'm grateful for this infillment this morning. And community, want to say thank you, and we'll see you next week. Hopefully, Tommy and I will both have our wives joining us next week to talk about relationships. But today has been powerful, and we want to just tell you, as Charlotte has said, stay encouraged.
Stay encouraged. All right.